please join me in welcoming Alexis to the stage.
Give it up. Give it up for the mayor.
Ooh.
Welcome to Birmingham.
It's good to be back. Very happy to be back here.
This is not my man's first trip
It is
to
not.
the great state of Alabama.
It is not. I was here, I'm trying to think, this is quite a few, it was maybe 6 years ago for Talladega. There was a particular, these were the heady times of crypto when there was a subreddit all about Dogecoin. And it was a kind of a joke altcoin based on a Shiba Inu dog meme. Anyway, they decided to fund a car, the Doge car, driven by it was Josh Wise. And actually got him in the race at Talladega. And there was this Dogecoin car there racing. And we were able to get an invite and hang out with the pit crew. And it was a blast. I had a lot of fun. Then I, that night, went to an r/Birmingham meetup here. I understand there's a few Redditors here. Thank you. Thank you for Redditing. Hello.
I bet they were surprised
so it was a good time.
that you turned up at that.
Yeah, I mean, I've been really blessed because we have Reddit communities now all over the world, and I have been, I've been to more meetups than anyone, and so I can travel literally anywhere in the world and count on a Reddit meetup or at least a subreddit community that I can go visit and hang out with, and it's provided me with some very interesting nights as a result. But it's cool to see community that is formed primarily online come offline like that, even if it's just to go to a ball game or have some drinks or just hang out in the park. There's a real sense of community there that's being formed.
Is that pretty much everything that you hoped it would evolve into when you started it?
My ambitions were much lower when we started. I really just didn't want to have a real job. The whole reason
Mission accomplished.
I mean, I really, through most of college, I went to the University of Virginia. I was a history major. Was that a Wahoo Wah? Wahoo Wah, yes. And national champion as well. Never thought I'd be able to say that.
That's a sore spot here locally, but.
Oh, yeah. Oh, right. Too soon. Too soon.
That was definitely a foul, though. Roll Tide.
Look, refs, they are human. They are fallible. Look, let's just throw us a bone. I mean, this is UVA. There's some amazing athletic programs there. The tennis team. There's amazing athletic programs. All the two sports I loved, football and basketball, are not really something we're known for. And I don't expect the football program to change too drastically at any point in the near future. There's a lot of things to be excited about down here. But on the basketball side, just let us have that. Let us have that. It was a good, come on. Charlottesville, Virginia, we needed that. But anyway, the whole point of this was, I was a history major who thought he was going to be a lawyer, and then I walked out of an LSAT because I was hungry, and I went to a Waffle House. This is true. And I was sitting there, because everyone was looking at me like, why the hell is this guy leaving? We just started. And sure enough, 30 minutes into it, I just got up and left, and I went and ate some waffles. And I was sitting there thinking, I must not want to be a lawyer if I walked out of the LSAT for breakfast. And I listened to my gut and decided, all right, well, I'm not going to be a lawyer, so what am I going to do with my life? And that was when I resolved to convince my roommate to start a company with me, because I knew I couldn't do it alone, and talked him out of a job that he had lined up with a software company, and we got started. And that was really the impetus for the company. It was called My Mobile Menu, for short, which would let people, well, you're laughing because you like the name? Or you're laughing at me? That's fine. And I just thought, this is 2004, 2005, so there were no smartphones. And I thought, man, waiting in line is lame. And do y'all have Sheetz gas stations down here? No? Sheetz? Oh, it's a little, sorry. I don't know how far south they go. Okay, but there's sheets all over Virginia. And when the magic of them, circa 2004, was if you wanted a sub, you just use a touch screen to order it. Very efficient, right? So inspired by Sheets and Waffle House, realized, hey, let's start a company so that you can just use your phone to order so you don't have to wait in line. Back then, though, it was text. And it was a pretty janky setup. The idea was basically like a glorified fax machine would send the order in. It was a disaster. It was way too early. And it was because we had applied to Y Combinator and then got rejected on that idea that they said, look, we like you too. We just don't like this thing. Build something else. And the something else ended up being Reddit. So all of this other stuff, the hundreds of millions of users, the community, all of those things that I'm so grateful for now were not at all a part of the vision when we got started. And I wish more founders were more honest about that stuff. Because if I were to come out here and be like, I wanted to bring the world together and connect them, you'd be like, nah, dude, like you were just creeping on girls in Harvard and making a social network to stalk them. I wasn't sure. I always wonder if the impression, Lizzie, I do my Zuckerberg all the time just randomly to annoy her. Lizzie's my chief of staff, and sometimes I wonder if people know who the hell I am when I do my Zuck. But yeah, it's just, I wish more founders are honest with that, because you have your big crazy ambitions, but realistically, like you just want to not fuck it up, and that's okay. That's okay. That's important.
What was like the first aha moment when you realized it deserved to exist?
Oh, man. I think, for the first few months, we were all of the users of Reddit, just with different usernames, like fake accounts. And we didn't have comments, so it wasn't like I was saying, like, great comment, Alexis. It wasn't that bad. But it was all the submissions were just like me and Steve, like just posting with different usernames, because we needed someone to show up and realize like, oh, there's like a thing here, there's a community here. I mean, it was just us, but enough to get them to want to submit and to want to care. And then a few months in, we no longer had to fake those posts, those submissions, and it just worked. And we'd wake up in the morning and there was a bunch of content, and my first job every morning was usually just to be like, all right, let me go find a bunch of links to submit on Reddit. But a few months in, it just was, you'd wake up in the morning and be like, oh, hey, there were people posting and voting on things while we were sleeping. Like, this must be working. And even still, with every milestone and every step forward and every step back, you still do wonder. You still do wonder where the ceiling is. But I think there are these times, we talk a lot in tech, right, about product market fit. And I think about this a lot with the founders that I work with now as an investor. And it really is when you actually don't understand why you're growing. You're just growing because either customers love you so much they're telling other customers about you, or your users are using it so much that they're naturally sharing. There are ways to quantify that, and it's important to figure out why eventually you're growing if you don't know why. But if you're at that moment, it's a very good indicator that you have found and arrived at this product market fit. And for us, fortunately, it happened pretty early. But again, it was also 2005, so the bar was a lot lower for people's attention. We didn't need to work as hard.
So for a guy that didn't even want a real job, and you build this, behemoth, was it tough to leave it? Yeah. Well, we sold Reddit to Condé Nast in 2006, like 16 months after we started, like shockingly fast, and for a very small amount of money relative to what it's worth today. Now, I was lucky enough that I got a second chance to come back and help turn it around back in 2014. But when I left, it was a few years into our Condé Nast tenure. They gave us a pretty strong amount of autonomy, but it still wasn't total autonomy. And I was joking earlier with some of the folks backstage that you get spoiled as an entrepreneur, and it's really hard to work for someone after you have gone down that path of an entrepreneur. And I just knew, all right, you know what, I got to unplug, I got to get away. And I actually I was happy y'all mentioned that in the intro. I fled the country. I'm Armenian on my father's side, and so I went back to the motherland and was volunteering with Kiva, amazing nonprofit that gets money in the hands of, gets money in the hands of entrepreneurs, where access to credit is very, very, very hard, even to this day for many folks. And shameless plug, they've also found, especially in the developing world, investing in women entrepreneurs has a huge impact. And it's a financial one, which is like, hey, now they're not only are they sources of revenue for their household, but they're also, right, they have this autonomy. They are the entrepreneurs, and members of their family start treating them differently, respecting them more. And I know this firsthand. It's pretty clear that studies show when you invest in women, they versus men, women do tend to put the benefits of that money back into their families and their communities, versus the guys who tend to buy other things that aren't necessarily as helpful. And I've gotten to see firsthand there what like the OGs of entrepreneurship were doing. I mean, these are not VC-backed founders trying to build the next app for who knows what. I mean, these are just entrepreneurs they're starting up a grocery store or making wine or just selling clothing. But this is the OG style business that helps so many of these economies get going. And it was great for me. And I felt coming back to the States, I then had an even greater appreciation for all the opportunity that this country's provided for me, and hopefully will continue to provide for many more. And it also, I think, gave me a good perspective too, but just how much of an echo chamber the Bay Area was. And I only lived there for about 2 years, but it was long enough to see very much for all the benefits that it brings of concentrating a bunch of people who have a similar kind of worldview and mindset. It also creates this bubble where you find a lot of people really just focused on solving problems for other people like them, which, yes, can create wonderful multi-billion-dollar outcomes, but clearly misses a lot of opportunity. And needless to say, it's a great time to be a founder outside of the Bay Area, probably the best time ever, and it's actually only going to get better, which is good for, I mean, I'm very fortunate in that a majority of our portfolio is now based outside of the Bay Area, and we're the first check-in companies, so we're really seeing where the trends are headed, and that means I get to spend a lot of my time everywhere else, which is great because I enjoy doing that, and it's, I think, a good thing broadly for the country.
Awesome. So switching gears to investing,
Yeah.
you've been involved either as a founder or an investor in 7 unicorns. Mm-hmm. So you're either really lucky or really good. That's not a question.
All right. I'll take both for sure. I think none of this stuff happens without a lot of chance. And was it Lombardi who said he'd rather be lucky than good? I still believe it. Yeah.
What are the commonalities of the founders of those companies?
So one of the things I'm really trying to help describe too, even within our firm, because we got a lot of partners who are at different stages of their own careers as investors, is the adjective I always come back to is compelling, and it's a hard one because it's not that they're particularly charismatic, it's not that they're particularly outgoing or charming. It's compelling, and it is because you don't even need the full hour. You could spend 10 minutes with this founder, with this founding team, and answer questions like, can they hire their next 10 employees away from really comfortable, amazing jobs to work at this uncertain early stage startup? Yes. Can they personally close their next 10 customers, no matter what industry, no matter what? Maybe because they know the industry that well, or because they've spent so much time talking to them, or what have you. Yes. Can they build the product or build the teams to build the product that's going to be at a high enough level of execution that it's going to work? Because that's what matters at the end of the day. Yes. And so this compelling quality is one that we wrestle with, but it's absolutely the thing that all these founders have in common, and it's the thing that helps them not only do all that stuff, but then when they are faced with the inevitable setbacks, are able to keep relentlessly adapting and problem solving and figuring out. Because yeah, I mean, every startup is a consistent disaster. Every single business. And do not ever doubt for a second, or at least do not ever think for a second that you're doing something wrong just because it feels like the world is falling apart as a founder. It is always falling apart as a founder. And there's plenty of people who posture. I was ranting about hustle porn the last 6 months. There are plenty of people who posture about how vital it is to be just dominating all the time and whatnot. And the reality is that's just a farce. And if I think about all those actual billion-dollar founders, none of them do that. It's just so interesting because that's not what entrepreneurship is about at the end of the day. It's not about some random social media post that makes you feel like you work really hard. It's about actually just doing the work. And then when the times are tough, knowing that you have a plan for dealing with that, whether it's your own crew of your sort of personal board, which has become a popular thing. I really like insisting that people do an inventory of their friends. This could get awkward if you brought them with you. But there's this saying about being the average of your 5 closest friends. And I think it's even more important as an entrepreneur. I mean, for anything you do, this is the same advice I will give to my daughter. She's 2 now, so she doesn't really, her mom is her best friend. But so good job, baby. But do this inventory of your friends, because if you are ambitious and really trying to accomplish things, whatever they are, the people that you end up spending most of your time with are going to have that huge impact. And so those 5 or so, whoever those closest friends are, really should be people who you find something admirable about, or there are things you want to learn from them or steal from them, not literally, spiritually sort of steal from them, absorb from them, or things about them that you admire, and if they aren't, honestly, life is too short. If it is so important to have that group around you, because if not, you're gonna make when you're gonna need that support, or when you're gonna need something, because we all do, you're gonna find yourself going to that board of advisors, so to speak, and they're gonna fail you. They're gonna let you down. And I think it is so worth it, because those are the relationships, whether you're an entrepreneur or whatever you do, you're still a human. And those relationships are going to be the things that you're going to actually do the inventory of when you're an old man on your deathbed looking back at a life well lived. So do that inventory. And again, this might lead to some really awkward drives home, but I'm sorry, we can't be friends anymore. But really have a tremendous value for your time and the people with whom you share it.
Yeah, you've been pretty outspoken about work-life balance, this epidemic of the hustle, the glorification of the hustle culture.
Of self-destructive work ethic. Obviously you've got to work really, really hard. I think no one is arguing that. No, that is not a very compelling argument to make. And I didn't care about this at all in my 20s. And when I look back on it, I'm real with myself. I'm like, damn, there were nights when I would start to see daylight creeping through. And if I had been honest with myself at 2 in the morning, I'd have been like, yo, dude, you're going to stare at a screen for the next 4 hours and not do anything really valuable. The only reason you're still up right now is this weird machismo. And it's just you. Your co-founders in another room. Why are you doing this? This is stupid. And there's diminishing marginal returns for sure. And actually, incidentally, great book on this, Science of Sleep, which I just finished. And there is a really, really compelling case for why just reasonable amounts of rest consistently is really, really important. But let's talk about sports, because we all love sports here, right? That's why y'all are here, right, too? Because he's married to Serena Williams. That's why you're all like, yeah, of course I'll go to this. I know. I get it. That's fine. But there is, I didn't appreciate it in my 20s. And now I have this role where we have this fund writing these investments, mentoring founders and CEOs from the earliest days. And I feel like this is my redemption. This is my chance to help them avoid mistakes that I made and to be even better than I've been as a founder. And I really started doing an inventory on this because, all right, now look, I grew up loving sports. Incidentally, hated tennis. I've come around. Hated tennis growing up. I was a football, basketball guy, right? And what I loved about sport, and the thing I think we all love about sport, is the fact that it is this really magical place in humanity, because we have a set of fixed rules. We have a pretty level playing field. It's the most meritocratic industry there is. And whereas everywhere else in every other industry, we want to say, oh, we're the best doctor in Alabama, or oh, we're the best founder in the whatever. We have all these measuring contests, even in business, right? Head count, revenue, valuation, exit. We're all measuring this BS to try to understand, but it's all kind of made up. But in sport, whew, there are winners and losers. And sure, I mean, as long as you're not cheating like Sharapova, it's a level playing field. And everyone...
She tell you to say that?
Huh?
Serena tell you to say that?
Not at all. No, I'm just making an observation as a sports fan. But the reason we love sport is because it is this level playing field. And so as a business leader, I have now this front row seat to greatness. And even as a casual fan, it's made me rethink everything, right? So specific example of that would be around coaching. And I could not have imagined the Wahoo's UVA Virginia coming out onto the court without their coaching staff, without Coach Bennett, right? Everyone would be like, where the hell did the coaches go? What's going on, right? There is not a single pro athlete in the world, best of their game, doesn't matter, who doesn't have a team of people that they rely on to get even better. Now, I mean, it's really an amazing thing to think that there are professionals, whether they're CEOs or lawyers or doctors, who would think, you know what, I don't need coaching. I don't need a team. I got this. LeBron needs a coach, though, or Serena, or Jordan, or go down the list. Like the fact that Tom Brady has a team around him supporting him, I don't know, probably Patriots, also not a good thing to reference, but the fact that we as professionals feel so proud and frankly arrogant that we don't think we need coaching all these degrees is insane to me. And I think that trend is now changing. We're seeing a rise of executive coaching. We're seeing a rise of self-care. We're seeing a rise of all these things. And now I'm starting to think, okay, all right, geez, I've been thinking totally wrong about this. Let me go deeper on this. And the part about the work-life balance, if we all agree again, then sports is a good role model for this, and we can think, okay, well, they're clearly, if they know what it means to be best, there are things we can learn from their greatness. When I look at work-life balance, and I think, all right, one of the most admirable traits that I see in my wife and I see in every one of these top athletes is that they value their time at work intensely. They are focused, they are determined, they are all in, they are grinding, they are all those things, right? But then when they are not, they value that time just as much or more. The rest, the recovery, the focus away from their day is just as important, if not more so, than the time they spend working. And so the hustle porn thing has always seemed so absurd to me, because it would be a joke to think that working yourself to exhaustion for 7 days a week would be a way to win a title. Because it wouldn't be, because no one would do that, because they would fail miserably. And when you look at how physical and mental all of these things are, and then we apply it to our jobs, which are much more heavily mental than physical, it just seems really obvious that we need to value this balance. And so I've been speaking out about it more because I also want to, frankly, I want to make more money. I want to have better decisions. I want my team to make better decisions. And I want my founders to be able to set their businesses up for greater success. And I don't think these things are mutually exclusive at all. I think they're required.
So the other, I think, bigger issue right now in tech is, as the founder of what the third largest platform in the on the internet, what do you think the role for tech for these companies is when it comes to publisher versus platform, and the censorship issue, Should they be a, neutral third party, or do they have, an obligation to monitor?
So I can really only, I can speak to Reddit specifically, obviously. And I think this is pretty broadly shared now across the industry with social media, which is there is a responsibility for the content on our platforms. And the reality is every one of these platforms has always censored some amount, basically since day one, because we all to some extent have content policies where we decide this is okay and this isn't. And there are some of these things that we as a society have basically agreed on and no one cares, or at least it is not a lightning rod issue. So there was literally the first thing I did when I got back in 2014, Reddit had not had a policy against revenge porn. So basically stolen nudes that were being posted on the site. And that was something that we instituted pretty swiftly, was very well received. Every platform has it now, a non-consensual nude policy, which as a society, I think we all agree, that is a good form of censorship that these platforms are engaging in. But it was one that was new in the sense that the world didn't really know what that really could only happen in a world of smartphones and the cloud and all these things. And so what I mean to say is we are always going to have to evolve where we draw that line, because technology is always innovating. And most of the time, I do think it's for really good things. Some of the time, it's for really bad things. And it's up to these platforms to decide where they want to draw that line, but they all have that responsibility. And I think where it gets really complicated now, especially, so Reddit is still only in Anglophone countries. So we have not internationalized outside of non-English speaking countries. So we, by and large, have a team and software that can process all that content. There is a much bigger challenge for these platforms that are international, where they are both the dominant source of news. In some cases, they are the internet for these countries, mostly in the developing world, where there is not an established media where this is how they're finding out what's going on in the world. And that is one that I do not take lightly, and it's a big part of why Reddit is still focused on the English-speaking world. And it's one where I think there has to be even more responsibility, because if we, for a minute, we all acknowledge that there is, we are wrestling with so much as a society right now with the understanding between fake news and this tribalism. This is 100 times worse in countries where there is no sense of trust around media and where there is no real sort of historical legacy of truth-seeking at all. So that, the bar is even higher. So I guess the answer is yes, there needs to be this. I think it's going to be a big part of why we will still stay focused on the English-speaking world for the foreseeable future, because that is already, it's already enough of a challenge daily for us to have to continuously enforce and figure out where we want to keep pushing that line and moving that line. But this is an ongoing discussion. This won't. I don't believe it'll personally ever end. And it will just have to be a new part of how we as a society discuss and think about these platforms, because the genie's not going back in the bottle.
You want to talk about the home front for a minute?
Sure.
So, kind of connecting the two, things going on in tech with your family life. Have you guys talked about limiting screen time or access to technology for your daughter?
Yeah, and this is, look, y'all notice how every one of us who builds a social network and has kids is like, no, we're going to really limit our phone time, our screen time, right? You notice that? That's not a coincidence. And is there hypocrisy to it? I think no doubt. The challenge, and I want to be specific about this, because we still use these devices. Let's be real. If I'm doing Olympia's hair, I need the iPad on because I need her watching usually some Pixar movie in order to give me the 30 minutes to an hour that it will take me to do all of that. But we reached a good compromise where, she gets her screen time. But we are very mindful of it. I think the worst offender, because look, I know everyone, when we were growing up, video games, heavy metal, gangster rap, these were all things that were going to pollute us and ruin us. And by and large, we as a society got used to it. Television, right? I grew up in front of a TV, let's be real. And so where I am most concerned is actually less about the screen time in particular, and more about the engagement, the sort of dopamine hits that everything from push notifications, all these things are doing, because I know those are algorithmically optimized to generate the most retention possible. And I feel fine about that for a more mature mind, because I mean, humans have to take some responsibility on what they want to do, and I think we as platforms need to do a better job finding out how, I mean, technically we're only building things for people age 13 and up, but we know that most of the apps on our phones or on our devices that the kids are interested in they're targeted for kids, but they're really, really intelligently designed to mess with those same buttons that trigger us like a slot machine. And I don't feel good about a child's mind being exposed to that, just in the same way that I wouldn't want a child's mind to be exposed to drugs or alcohol that I would feel differently about with an adult mind. And so that's where I really want to be firm about drawing that line. And so, then you're doing surgery on your iPhone and basically, right, like shutting off notifications and trying to monitor the apps. But I think it's going to be easier said than done, especially for a generation of kids who, are going to have moments where there's an iPad in front of them because it needs to babysit, right? It needs to be there occupying them. But that is where I think there's the most risk, and that's where we're the most adamant about trying to avoid her getting in that mentality. But I watch her using YouTube Kids. And I've seen like a half dozen competitors spring up, so I'm excited about this. Because like she'll get on like the 10th video, and she's like blazing through these things, and I'm just like, oh man, this is wild. And it'll be some random Russian like opening chocolates or toys. Like it's kind of like an ASMR video, and the whole thing just makes me feel so uncomfortable. And I just there are these weird black holes on YouTube that I just want her to not ever have to be exposed to as a young person. And so I think that there are smart people working hard to make better product solutions there, but we still don't have them yet. So there's your long answer to, yeah, I don't feel great about it. And so we draw some pretty strong lines around it.
Awesome. So what do you guys do as parents, as a family, to kind of normalize things, given your schedules, given your careers, all you have going on?
Well, okay, so every night, what's a good example? So this one is the hardest with time zones, because I travel most weeks, but then I'll take a week or two and just be wherever the family is, but then I'll be like, all this week I was traveling, I'll see them this weekend. But one of the things that we keep routine, I don't know, you could tell me if this is normal, you'll be like, oh, this is just one of those crazy 1%er things. But we have a FaceTime routine. So like she'll do her bath, and no matter where I am, I always have blocks in my calendar for around 7 p.m. Eastern. And she'll do her bath time. She'll get out of the bath. We'll fire up FaceTime, call Papa. She'll tell me about her day. She can't really tell me about her day, but Mama tells me about her day. And then we'll do prayers together. And she'll get in bed and she'll have her little bottle, and then Mom will be reading her a story, or I'll be reading her a story. We'll trade off. And like there's a guaranteed wind down where basically every day, Google Calendar, 1 hour blocked, like don't you dare try to schedule a meeting during this thing. Like I've I've gotten up from meetings and been like, I gotta go to prayers now, bye. And and it's weird, but to have these hard rules has been the only way, I think, to consistently get that like guaranteed, like, okay, here is the family time for the three of us. And it sucks that it's an hour, but at least it's an hour I know no matter where I am in the world or where she is in the world, like that happens. And then I try to make sure weekends are together, almost always. Like Sundays are like we wake up, we're making breakfast, like we have our routine and we spend that day together. And I think, I mean, it's funny, like Sundays I'll try to be off technology as much as possible. And then, yeah, for the rest of the week, you know, the bath evening prayer session, that all happens on FaceTime. And I'm grateful for it, right? That is seamless technology that helps us feel more connected. But then, you know, Sundays we try to shed it. But those are the things. I mean, we have remarkably relaxed pretty straightforward lives at the end of the day. Like when it comes to the time that we're spending together, it's really just about literally time that we get to spend together, and that's it. My childhood friends are all really bored by the stories I tell them. I really feel like they got really excited when they found out I was dating her all those years ago, and were expecting better stories, but that's okay.
Tell these guys how y'all met, because I think that story's, they probably entertained by that one.
Oh, I was out drinking one night in Rome, and I was at, right? It's so romantic.
That's how every relationship story starts.
No, it gets better. Well, so here's the twist, though. I didn't meet her that night. I met her the next morning because I was hungover and I missed breakfast and I need coffee. And so they directed me, because I went down to the buffet and I was like, hey, can I get some food? And they were like, no. I was like, I get some coffee. And they were like, well, you can sit outside. And I was like, okay, great. And I sat down, took out my laptop, and I started working. And the table next to me had a few people sitting there. And this Australian dude leans over and he's like, aye, mate. There's a rat under your table. And I'm like, wait, did you say there's a rat under my table? Like, dude, I see rats all the time. Like, it's fine. Like, thank you, but I'm going to be okay. Because I really didn't think much of it. You see rats all the time, and it's just like, whatever. It's in the city. You're walking down the street. And I didn't realize he was just trying to get me to move. He was a jerk. And he was trying to get me to leave because they wanted the rest of the team to sit there. And then Serena turns around and she's like, oh, you're not afraid of rats? And I was like, no, I'm not. I'm not afraid of rats at all. And I don't know. And then she asked me, it was like there was this tech conference. I really did not want to be there. But I had said, I'd just gotten back to Reddit. It was just the start of the turnaround. And this comms person we had insisted I go. But anyway, I was like, I really don't want to go, but I'm going to go. I'm grateful, obviously, that I did. And she asked who I was there to hear speak, because she knew there was a tech conference going on in the hotel. And I was like, oh, I'm here to speak. And she was like, oh.
Humble brag.
Yeah. Oh, no, it gets better. And I was like, and so I told her that, and she's like, oh, really? She's like, what's your company? And I was like, oh, it's called Reddit. And she's like, huh, I haven't heard of it. And then, it gets worse. And she takes out her phone, and she's got her iPhone. Now, at this time, and this has been one of my things, too, I came back in 2014, and Reddit did not have a mobile app. There was no app called Reddit on the App Store or Android Play Store. And so, of course, she takes out her phone, searches for Reddit on the App Store, and gets no results for an app called Reddit. And she's like, are you sure you've got a company called Reddit? And I immediately texted my head of product and was like, get the app done. And I joke that Serena's the reason why Reddit finally launched native mobile apps, but it's actually kind of true. And then she was basically smitten with me, and then we fell in love. That was it.
That?
The end. Yeah, worked out. That's what happened.
Awesome. So, is that like field research?
Yeah, I mean, look,
User testing?
It hit home, though, an important point, which was that, yeah, we were not on the App Store, so we did not exist for a whole segment of the internet population. But look, we got the app. You know, she came around. And then despite the fact that she probably thought I was a charlatan with some fake website business, her agent invited me to the tennis match that night that she was playing. And I watched, and it was fun. And I was like, hey, I've kind of shouldn't have written off this sport. It's actually pretty intense. And yeah, I don't know, we texted, and one thing led to another. I found myself in Paris and took her out for a charming walk around the city, and the rest is history. Yeah.
So what's going on with crypto?
Dude, I don't know. I got into so much trouble last year because people were asking me for crypto prices.
You got roasted.
I really, I continue to be so incredibly long on it, but I really don't speculate. Like, I own crypto. I've got a decent little portfolio, mostly Bitcoin, a little bit of Ethereum, and then a bunch of other random altcoins. But I don't think about it because and I deeply believe this in all my investing. Like, I am so long-term focused. I mean, we have to be initialized because we're waiting 10 years typically for an exit. And I think the same way. I think I'm still very, very long on crypto, and I've seen some really impressive tech be built in the last year while it's been the crypto winter. And I think that's such a good sign because all the people looking for a quick buck got scared away. And the people who are still here are building really impressive tech. And it's a user experience problem. Basically, once the user experience gets good enough and seamless enough that I can get my dad using crypto without him having to think about using crypto, then it wins. And I'm obviously Facebook making big moves with Libra, just to continue to get people interested and excited, and I'm still very long on it all.
So do you think your experience with Kiva kind of gave you some, is there
Oh yeah,
anything
actually
you can draw on there where crypto
Yeah.
sort of enables that segment of the population?
Yeah, I think that's where it's most interesting right now for a whole world of people who are unbanked but who have smartphones. You now have an opportunity to create this infrastructure without all the bullshit like remittances. I mean, the amount of money that is taken for no good reason from these companies like the Western Unions of the world to wire money across the world is insane. Like, this is ones and zeros. And again, it comes back to a product experience. If you can make that experience seamless enough that there's no reason it should work any differently from like you Venmoing me money. Venmoing me money as one American to another America should be product-wise as easy as you sending money back to your family in Armenia. And even doing all of the absolutely right things you need to do in order to get, KYC and all the other security things required, like, should still be that easy of a product solution and still do everything right and above board. And so technology, especially crypto, can help here, but it all comes down to the product that gets built. And so, like I said, the encouraging thing is there's a lot of very smart, very driven people building really impressive stuff here. And I also still believe, this got cut, but I was ranting on Colbert about this because we take for granted the fact that, like, we're gonna wake up in the morning and basically know what the dollar is worth globally, and we have faith in the dollar. And actually, you know what, it is a modern miracle by and large that, like, no matter what, the world actually still largely has confidence in the US dollar. And for so many countries and so many governments, there have been multiple generations of wealth just blown up because of hyperinflation, because of terrible government policy. And there is something, as crazy as crypto markets are, there is something that's actually incredibly appetizing to see some relative stability in a thing like Bitcoin combined with total autonomy and authority over that money. And my fam, the ones who left, technically they left Turkey, Armenia, fled because of the genocide. There are so many stories of people who flee really awful regimes with whatever they can hide in their clothing or whatever jewelry they can get out with, whatever wealth they can, because you can't just show up in the bank and be like, hello, I'd like to take all my money because I'm trying to leave now. And I think for so much of the developing world, there is a huge opportunity and a role that Bitcoin and crypto broadly can play because it's giving people agency over this thing that's going to take care of their families wherever they end up, however they can make it.
So what tech have you seen recently that you're sort of most excited about, most bullish on?
Well, okay. So I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, like, I saw some ship shirts out here. There's some ship love.
They're in here.
Now, I have, it's interesting. So I've actually got some friends at Target who are very, very, very proud of the acquisition. Now, to see this homegrown hero is such a big deal. And I've been all over the country. And the story for the last 7, 8, 9 years that I go everywhere is you have to have all of these ingredients to get the ecosystem, the stew, really bubbling. And the hardest one is the sort of the massive exit outcome story. Because you can get the money, you can get the talent, you can, like, lots of places have that, but then it's just it's a matter of time, it's a matter of luck, it's a matter of grit for that to happen. And then when it does, it truly is an inflection point, because then it becomes this proof, not just to outside investors, but also the inside community, that it can be done here. Plus, you get the added benefit of newly minted money that knows what it takes to build a fast-growing startup here. And now they got a little extra money in their checkbooks, or in their bank accounts, known as a checkbook, and they're inclined to want to write that angel check or otherwise help the ecosystem. And it's an exciting turning point for a tech community. And so I know Shift is not a new thing. So I kind of cheated with my answer here, but I thought it was worth mentioning, because like I said, the trends are so clear. We have a front row seat at Initialized because we are the first check in Founders. Majority of our portfolio now is outside of San Francisco. And so we're seeing more and more companies, and we're grateful that they still come to us and they'll still come through, and we'll hear about them in our networks. And we're working harder now to put more partners in more hubs across the country. Atlanta, actually, in the last few years has really, really gotten, we've got 3 new companies now that are Atlanta based just in the last year and a half. And so there's so many more opportunities now all over the country. And it is such a good time to be in not the Bay Area as a startup founder, and that is only going to get better. I was ranting on Twitter about this a little while ago, because I was hanging out with some dudes in Omaha, in Nebraska, and we were talking about this very point, which was, for them, they are, some of them were working at early stage startups or startups in Omaha. Some of them were just doing remote work for other companies, whether it was in Chicago or New York or San Francisco. What all of them had in common was that they were making a decision to live here because of the quality of life and the fact that they could do work that was incredibly fulfilling, incredibly stimulating, incredibly satisfying, paid great, but they could have the lifestyle and the life that they wanted here. And remote work it's not like a trend. That is it. That is the future of work. And companies are so desperate for talent that there will continue to be more and more accommodating the remote work lifestyle, because thankfully, this goes back to the work-life balance, more and more CEOs are realizing that having someone in the office for 10 hours to do a mediocre job versus having them at home working for the hours they need to do and being judged based on their output is what matters. And that the model of this like weird paternalistic butt in a seat, got him in the office versus actually measuring just the output is better for everyone. And so all of these factors are leading to the fact that, like, if I could short the startup ecosystem in San Francisco, I would. I don't mean literally but figuratively, it is an amazing time to be outside of that. And it's going to be fun, because I feel like coming back here in another few years, there's going to be so many more of these like similar stories, and it will just compound.
Yeah, you nailed it. The success obviously financially has its reward, but the entrepreneurs that come out of that ecosystem is the true reward for the community. So.
Yeah, and there is this, and I think to the credit, I've talked to a couple of like South tech, like Southern CEOs about this too, and the thing that they bring up is they feel like there is a natural, and maybe this is just a cultural work ethic thing, there is less of a drive to go to networking events and be a part of a scene, whereas that is like bread and butter San Francisco. You could go to a Bay Area startup networking event, you go to 100 in a single night. And whereas more of the emphasis here is just about like actually doing the work. And I think that is a huge advantage. And my only advice would be, as this ecosystem grows, finding more opportunities though to pull people up and be like, hey, like you actually have some awesome advice, awesome experience. Like, here's another awesome person. This will not be a waste of your time. Y'all need to get together. We'll start to have this excellent multiplier effect, because I think the default state is just do the work, be humble about it, get to it. but the magic starts to happen when you put a couple of those people together and, you know, pour them a few drinks and get them some good food and actually get them talking, especially companies that are either at the same stage or similar stage and then maybe one stage beyond. Because like, look, okay, I'm glad you all are here. I really appreciate that you're listening to me. But the advice that I would give to you all as founders, if you're at like, you know, if you're at $1 million in revenue, is only so useful to the advice that someone who has been where you were a year ago. Because my perspective on it is like 7 years out of date. And even though I'm working with founders who are going through it right now, it's still not as useful as folks who are in it or have just been in it. And so looking for opportunities to get those people together and then get them the comfort to speak openly and frankly about the ups and the downs of it is just magic. That's where the cheat codes really start to unlock.
Awesome. So we've got some microphones out here, and we've got a few minutes for some audience Q&A. So if you would like to ask the mayor a question, raise your hand.
I was not democratically elected mayor of the internet.
Do you have any like official duties as mayor of the internet? I have nothing.
You know, it's funny. It was a Forbes article that I still get teased about. I'm waiting for some ribbon cutting or something that I could do.
The key to the
internet. Yeah, I don't have any of those things, sadly.
All right, who's first?
We got one up top. We got a couple. Upper rows are very ready for questions. Haha, no
Elliot,
mics for you.
Scream.
Okay. Hey, pitch me link. Wait, you're gonna pitch me?
This is your one shining moment.
Wait, no, it's not. I mean, it's not that dramatic. All right.
Don't mess this up, Elliot.
No.
Have you ever needed a business card really badly and not had one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Have you
Yes.
played a game of like, what's your number? I'll text you. Maybe with Serena, like you text me. Right?
Yeah.
People have tried to solve this problem in the past by going app first.
Mm-hmm.
But as of December, with native smartphones, in-camera support for QR codes,
Mm-hmm.
we don't need an app anymore. So what we've done is by hacking the Apple Wallet and the Google Pass Wallet and just native smartphone camera technology, we allow you to share your contact information, your social information, your work information by just holding a camera over someone else's phone. No app required.
Ah. Hey, all right. Thank you. That was good. I feel like that was great.
You're in for $1 million.
That was great. It's like a little Shark Tank impromptu. That's dope. Yeah, I feel like there was this 5 years ago, there was the what was it? You had to open the app. There was a bump thing where you had to open an app, set up a thing, and it was just all these layers of friction. And so I think whatever wins has to be as frictionless as possible. So it sounds like that's basically what it is. Just take out the phone, take a thing. Yeah. Yeah, see that? That was not going to be successful. Yeah, you really need that one way. You need to be able to just say here, but, and not have to be like, hey, can you download this app for me real quick? Yeah, well, wait, I don't have my phone on me, though. Is it that good? Oh.
It's magic.
You just take a photo and then voila. That's cool. We'll see, because all right. Unfortunately, I still got Serena's number that day, but it definitely would have made it even easier. Yeah. Okay.
So do you have a question?
You have a question too?
I do. Did you face the temptation when in 16 months before you sold to prematurely monetize? Growing a platform is exactly what we're doing. So what's your advice to founders who are growing a platform that they're offering for free, that are bombarded with how you monetize?
Yes. Okay. For what you were doing, okay, this is helpful that you pitched me though, because now I know what you're doing. So I would say if you're trying to get to scale as fast as possible with users, and if your business is trying to win on this kind of growth, especially if it's like a network or a social network, you really can put off the revenue discussion so long as you have that growth. And so we definitely put off that revenue discussion. Most social networks or these types of ideally fast-growing type networks put it off and can afford to, because the explanation is like, look, as long as we're growing really fast, we'll figure out how to monetize it later because we'll have the numbers to do so. Now, there is a risk, because obviously if that growth starts tapering, then it's like, okay, well, if you can't say you've got hyper growth, you can't fall back on revenue. My advice would be, if you have a way that you can get people to spend money, because like, don't optimize for ads. That's not an ideal look. If you can find a way to optimize for revenue that also helps drive growth. So I'm just making this up, right? But if this thing is valuable enough to like the hyper connectors, that they're willing to pay some amount of money, and you know that that unlocks some trivial feature that 99% of your users don't care about, but your hyper connectors do, then maybe this actually is a useful tool to grow. Because, you know, there's a fairly crowded marketplace of things to like help you meet people or network. So maybe this becomes the way to stand out. But I would say, don't optimize for revenue in the short term for business like this unless you think there are direct ways to help increase growth. Because this has to be, in the short term, this has to be all about growth, because it'll just come back to, it'll come back to investors thinking like, okay, how badly does the world need this in a world where the business card itself is like antiquated, but people still are meeting in real life and want to exchange. And so you just have to, make the case that this is so much freaking better than just, oh, I'll text you my number, which is already pretty low friction, but can this be the magical experience? Can this be that much of a better one? And so the growth story is the ideal one. Sure.
You got time for a couple more. Hey, there you
Hey.
go.
So quickly, I know you mentioned a lot about, well, actually when we left the Waffle House and not left the Waffle House, left the LSAT for the Waffle House.
Yes.
I'm just thinking from a visual standpoint and coaching and training, what your thoughts are on mindfulness, which is the term goal without vision is just a wish. So did you envision yourself becoming who you are now and having speeches or?
You know, I like that. I think it's important to have, and thanks to this world of social media, we get to see more people announcing these things to the world. I think it is important to have these goals broadly defined, and I think the vision of it is important. And actually, I think there's actually a decent amount of literature and studies to support that, like, if you're gonna go give a really important speech, visualizing yourself doing it helps give you the confidence. And maybe, hell, even if it is all placebo effect is still a real thing. And so to that extent, I think it's super, super important. The crucial thing that I would advise is, and also confess, is that like the details of this future, I really did not have a vision for. There was, I think the only things I was specific about in that, I don't know, during that Waffle House epiphany, was that I knew what I didn't want. I know I did not want to be a lawyer. I knew that I wanted to feel autonomy and pride in the work that I did. And I knew that I wanted to feel like every hour that I was putting into the work was benefiting me and my people. And so those were the things, those were the feelings, those were the specific like parts of that I really felt. And I'll say this too, the attitude around it and the things that I think about now have broadened to be more selfless, or at least less selfish, because I am a husband now and I am a father now. And so I do think a lot more about putting the time that I have, you know, getting to do work that I genuinely love and am genuinely energized for, to be things that I know will not only support them, but also be the things that they'll be proud of too. And so I hope that the legacy that I leave for my daughter and you know, God willing, many more kids will be not in, I hope nobody ever talks about Reddit at the end of the day. Like, I want the stories that she passes on to be about me as a person, and the work that I do to be the evidence for that story. But like, I don't, it has helped me, it has humbled me in so many ways becoming a dad, because it really helped me helped me understand the stuff that I actually cared about. And yeah, I know there's a lot of answer for your question, but hopefully that's good. Yeah.
Hi, I want. It's not on. Well, I'll just yell. Oh, I just wanted to tell you that I admire your dedication to your 1 hour with your family, because my mom right here, she's a single mother, and so
Yeah.
And so growing up in a single parent household, it's been pretty tough, but I just really admire how, even though you can't be there, you still find time to be there. You're not letting your kid feel like she has a single parent, because every night you're still there.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, I'll tell you, wow, single parents are legit societal superheroes, and that was something I really never appreciated until I was like, I don't know. You get those moments as a parent, especially a new parent, and you're just like, wow, like I thought being an entrepreneur was intense. I thought that was hard, and I could not imagine going through the journey alone. And yeah, so anyway, all single parents are superheroes. Your mama is clearly one of them. So yeah, thank you for all of the single parents out there. It's just, it's amazing, amazing work. Hey, Wahoo Wah.
Did not walk out of the LSAT and went to UVA for law school and then Interaction Hall before becoming
You should have gone to the Waffle House, man.
He should have had that Waffle House Vision Quest.
I know, dude. Wait, do you know the Waffle House on 29, right? Yeah, that's the one. Yeah. I'm trying to get a little, they think I'm crazy, because like I'll go back to Seville once a year and I'll sit at the same booth. Like I'm trying to, one of these days you're going to see I'm going to put up a little plaque or something. I just got to bring my power drill in there. So the next potential law student can go sit there. Okay. But yes, what do you got?
with your portfolio becoming increasingly outside the Bay Area, what do you see as sort of the biggest challenge for tech startups in the cities outside the Bay Area?
It is, well, it hints at why I want more of y'all to be getting these meals together and creating more of a, and when I say community, I guess I really mean intelligence network. Like, the biggest challenge they face is it comes from an ignorance about the subtleties and the nuances of like a specific example would be like the Silicon Valley way to fundraise. And I don't mean it's the like right way, but there's a ton of money there that is desperately looking to invest in companies. And there are good to great companies that I see coming to, I mean, we have a, for instance, right? We got a company based out of Florida, and he's doing some amazing work. I can't go into too much detail because I need to figure out what it is. But, we were their first check, we're working with him, and the thing that I realized was he's in his little bubble there in Florida, and he's working hard. He's building a great business. He's building it in an industry that VCs typically, especially on the coast, do not understand at all. And so he comes into meetings with people who have a lot of money, who should be very ready to deploy it because the business is real, it's growing, it's making money. But they're talking to a founder who is like very expert at an industry they don't understand, and it makes them feel very uncomfortable to the point where instead of it pushing them to be like, oh, I need to actually learn because there's a huge business opportunity here in a sector I didn't understand, it actually makes them think, oh, this guy's probably scamming me. Like, and there's nothing, it is a weird feedback to give to a founder, but we're starting to see this where once they can talk to a couple of other founders who can kind of help translate all of the like ritual and BS of like how fundraising is typically done with VCs on the coast, this one specific thing, it like changes. And it's a very nuanced thing, but where I say these intelligence agencies are super helpful is that the thing that the Bay Area historically and these other startup, like the Silicon Valley historically has had such an advantage of, is that it's a high concentration of founders at roughly a similar stage doing, similar-ish things, so that they can share information about everything from not just how to do that pitch well for that particular industry, but which VCs to talk to first, or who are the people in the office who you need to meet with first, because they're the ones who actually do understand it. And it's all of this little intelligence network stuff that you take for granted in the Valley, because you're one text or one phone call away from someone who can give you some useful advice or feedback. But if you're sitting there in the middle of Florida and your network is not plugged in there, you're just missing out on that. And it's such a solvable problem that in a few years it won't really be much of an issue. But in the short term now, that's where I'm seeing the most opportunity to improve, and that's where, really it just comes from these sort of informal networks where you just have people who you trust and who you can speak openly with and who will speak openly to you and who are solving real problems. It'll start to spin up pretty quick.
Last one.
When did you first start coding, and what were the coding languages that you used?
All right. And also, if you didn't get a chance to ask me a question, please ask me on Twitter and I'll respond. I started, if you can call it, HTML was what got me into programming broadly. I was probably 13 or 14. I built a GeoCities website, and I was like, yes, geocities.com/Silicon Valley/hills/ I think 4924 was my address, and it was just amazing. I always liked art and I liked design, and so then I realized, I can build this website and anyone in the world can see it. And it was for Quake 2, which was my favorite video game at that point. And I remember looking down at the counter on the bottom, and it was up to 600, and I was like, oh my God, 600 people have seen my website. I didn't realize it was a page view counter, and so every time I would reload, it would go up. So it was just me. But it still felt really good, and it was through that I got more interested in programming. And the first actual class that I took was in Pascal, which is, wow, yes, Pascal. And I remember making tic-tac-toe games and fun text-based adventures, and then eventually, Java, Visual Basic. Wow, yeah, I still got the scars from that one. And then I actually tried learning Lisp, because the first version of Reddit was in Lisp, which was a disaster. And then we switched it to Python, and then only wrote Python for probably 6 months. And then at that point, we were able to hire people who were much smarter and better. So I still do a little bit of web design-based development, but not much, just JavaScript really, and some HTML and CSS. But I'm so jealous of you and your generation, because you have so many resources. If you have any interest in programming whatsoever, it is the most valuable skill you can learn, and you can start learning it for free. I cannot think of any more skill that is more valuable and more free. And so if you have any interest, please do it. It will be, no matter what you want to do with your life, it will be able to serve you and help you, and it is the modern superpower. And I feel I don't know. I feel like in Germany, when the printing press started rolling out, and Gutenberg was like, yeah, we've got Bibles, here's your Bible, wunderbar. That's what he sounded like.
You've done Australian and
I know,
German.
I've got range. Thank you. And you got to imagine, right? Okay, so it was 14th, 15th century. I don't know, I was a history major, but clearly not a very good one. You had all these Germans running around being like, yeah, wunderbar. And the world of information changed, because now if you had an idea, you could share it faster and further than ever before. And if you were literate, you could consume it, and that was a big deal, and it had such a huge impact on civilization, on culture, on knowledge, on everything. But for a really long time, the only people who could benefit from it were the ones who could read and write and had access to buy the books or the printing and all that stuff. And so knowledge historically has been so restricted to people with access and either deliberately or not kept away from those who don't. And I see this as a new literacy that is so much more powerful than what the printing press and reading and writing was able to bring to the world. Because this is a technology that is borderless. This is a technology that is the lifeblood of everything we do. It is in all of our hands 24/7. It has tremendous reach, tremendous scale, and the literacy, so to speak, is freely available so long as you have that internet connection and time. And that's not to make light of it. I mean, it's still a huge investment. But the return on that investment is so incredibly massive that I sometimes feel like the person time traveling back to like, the 14th or 15th century being like, y'all need to read and write and make books and stuff, except really this is so much more powerful. So anyway, it's a super important thing. And for those of you who are already in this industry and doing it, please take time to work with nonprofits and organizations and schools, bring them into your offices. I've been an advisor to one nonprofit called Black Girls Code for probably like 8 years now. And that was before, incidentally, I had a daughter who is a black girl that I hope will code one day, but that was convenient. There is so much that you can unlock by getting young people in front of this stuff, showing them role models in the community, giving them encouragement, and like seriously, one of the best investments you can make in your community is helping make sure that there's another generation of programmers, or just people who are interested and have access to technology take part, because it will change their lives. So I hope you're enjoying your time as a programmer and you will continue to thrive doing it, because it is wizardry in this age.
Well, look, let's not make it 7 years in between trips to Alabama.
No,
next time.
right? Should we do this again?
We should definitely do this again.
Okay.
Y'all give it up for Alexis.
All right. I want to come back, and I'm going to bring my family, if that's cool.
Bring the fam.
Okay. All right. Deal. Thank y'all. I will. We were recently talking about doing